It began the way many cosmic stories begin quietly. No alarms, no headlines, just a faint streak captured by an amateur telescope on a night when nothing remarkable was supposed to happen. The first frame showed a dot brighter than any small asteroid should be sharp-edged, almost deliberate in the way it carved itself across the darkness. At first, no one cared. The sky throws stones at us every night. But this one refused to behave. Astronomers expected a coma, the hazy shroud of vaporized ice that gives comets their dramatic glow. Instead, 3I/Atlas appeared clean, almost polished. No tail, no dust halo, nothing resembling the familiar architecture of solar system debris. It moved like a stone, but glimmered like metal. And that was only the first anomaly. Official channels stayed silent longer than usual. NASA's real-time feed suffered interruptions at the exact moment Atlas slipped behind the Sun. Public data stalled. Meanwhile, amateur astronomers from small domes in Chile, Arizona, and the Canary Islands took the lead, tracking a visitor that shouldn't have been so bright, shouldn't have been so smooth, and above all, shouldn't have been moving that fast. Of course, this wasn't humanity's first encounter with a troublemaker from interstellar space. In 2017, Oumuamua entered the solar system like a razor-thin shard, tumbling unpredictably and accelerating in ways nothing without an engine should accelerate. Scientists argued for years, splitting into camps. Natural oddity, hydrogen iceberg nitrogen fragment, and the Boulder group who whispered what the others avoided saying. Artificial. Then came 2I/Borisov in 2019, a model citizen of interstellar travel, icy, dusty, predictable. The normal one. The control sample. The one that made Oumuamua look even stranger. Now Atlas had arrived, and instead of clarifying the mystery, it made the riddle deeper. Its path was hyperbolic, the signature of a true interstellar traveler, something not bound to the Sun, something that would visit once and never return. But the angle of approach was too clean, too efficient, too mathematically precise, as if plotted rather than inherited from chance gravitational scattering. Then came Anomaly 2 non-gravitational acceleration, a faint push that no one could explain. Comets accelerate when they vent gas like tiny rocket engines erupting from their icy surfaces. But Atlas vented nothing. No visible jets, no plumes, nothing that should produce thrust. And then, the most controversial detail of all the anti-tail. Instead of pointing away from the Sun, some faint structure seemed to angle toward it, as though Atlas were pushing into the solar radiation rather than being pushed by it. A physical contradiction. Comets do not do this. Dust does not do this. But spacecraft can, provided they control their orientation. For the conspiracy-minded, the conclusion was inevitable. It was a probe. It was a surveyor. It was an interstellar messenger finally revealing itself. For scientists, it was a headache. If it was natural, it was unlike any natural object ever seen. If artificial, then someone somewhere built it long before humanity learned to walk upright. Reports surfaced of telescope outages, delayed data releases, inconveniently timed solar flares that corrupted instruments. None of this proved anything, of course, but patterns do not need to be true to be tempting. They only need to feel intentional. Atlas emerged behind the Sun after 3 days of radio silence, and when the first images came in, they painted an object unchanged by its passage, as though the star's heat had done nothing. No shedding, no flaring. Its profile remained eerily stable. Matter tells one story, motion tells another. And in this case, the stories did not match. As more observers locked onto the object, a subtle realization began to spread. Atlas was not tumbling. Natural bodies spin chaotically. Atlas held orientation steady and controlled like a craft traveling with purpose rather than debris thrown by chance. By now, the scientific community was split. Skeptics insisted on patience. Anomalies happen, data can mislead, instruments fail. But the other side, the side emboldened by Oumuamua, recognized a familiar pattern: improbability, piling upon improbability, until coincidence felt like the weakest explanation in the room. The final tension of this first chapter arrived with a simple observation. The vector of Atlas's movement aligned almost suspiciously with a region of space known for gravitational peculiarities. Too precise to ignore. Too neat to accept as random. If Atlas was natural, it was the strangest natural object ever recorded. If it was not, then the solar system had just received a visitor who did not come to stay, only to pass through quietly, deliberately, watching far more than it revealed. And the world had no idea yet what it was dealing with. What do you do when the universe hands you an object that doesn't obey its own rules? Do you dismiss it as noise, or do you treat it as a message? That was the question dividing observatories, research groups, and late-night conference calls across the world. The data pouring in from spectrographs raised more questions than answers. Why did Atlas reflect sunlight the way polished metal does, rather than the diffuse scatter of rock or ice? Why were early scans hinting at an imbalance of nickel and iron, a ratio rarely seen in natural bodies? Was this the signature of some exotic formation process, or the residue of engineered alloys? And if it wasn't engineered, then how did a supposedly natural object maintain such a stable attitude through rotational forces that should have sent it tumbling violently? What mechanism kept it balanced? Was it gyroscopic, magnetic, or was something inside? Compensating. Scientists turned to precedent. They opened the case files. Oumuamua, Borisov, comet behavior catalogues stretching back centuries. They combed through everything, but no known comet had ever shown an anti-tail like this one. No asteroid had ever accelerated without shedding gas. No interstellar object had ever behaved as though it understood momentum. So what was Atlas? At Harvard, one group asked the question directly. Could it be artificial? And if it were artificial, what kind of technology could survive interstellar flight? A light sail, perhaps, thin sheets of reflective material propelled by radiation pressure. But if Atlas were a sail, why wasn't it tumbling like debris? Why was it holding steady, facing the same direction for days at a time? Others proposed a magnetic plasma drive, the kind that leaves no visible exhaust, only faint electromagnetic disturbances. Was Atlas using the solar wind as its propellant? Could its anti-tail be the signature of such a mechanism? Or were these explanations nothing more than our own desperation to make sense of the unfamiliar? Meanwhile, conspiracy theorists raised their own questions. Why did NASA's coronagraph feed glitch exactly when Atlas crossed behind the Sun? Why did ground-based observatories release their images late and out of sequence? Why were some datasets labeled missing, corrupted, or pending verification? Was this mere coincidence, the usual chaos of scientific bureaucracy, or were institutions sitting on information too disruptive to share? If they were hiding something, what would that something be? A probe? A scout? A sentry from a civilization older than our species? Or simply a piece of cosmic driftwood with perfect timing and terrible manners? The debate intensified when a new dataset emerged from a European observatory. The trajectory analysis showed a peculiar detail. Atlas was threading through the solar system, along a path that minimized gravitational interference, as if avoiding major perturbations. How would a natural body flung randomly through space manage such an optimized route? Was this simply a fortunate alignment, a trick of orbital mathematics, or evidence of intent? Every answer gave birth to another question. If it was a probe, who sent it? And when, 1 million years ago, 10 million, were they still alive watching? Or was this an abandoned relic drifting through star systems like a bottle in a cosmic ocean? And if it wasn't a probe, then why did its behavior mimic one so convincingly? The most unsettling discussion came from the SETI community. If a civilization wanted to survey other star systems, would it announce itself loudly or remain quiet, hidden, drifting under the radar? Would it send crewed vessels or small, durable, uncrewed scouts? Would it risk communication or maintain silence to avoid detection, following the logic of the dark forest, where every signal is a potential danger? And if that logic were true, then what was Atlas doing here at all? Was it observing recording mapping? Testing our response? Or was its presence completely unrelated to us? A passing stranger indifferent to the worlds it glided past? Even natural explanations carried their own disturbing weight. A hydrogen iceberg, some proposed, though such objects should vaporize too quickly. A nitrogen shard from a distant exo-Pluto possible. But where was the erosion expected from such a journey? A fragment of a shattered dwarf planet, then why the metallic composition? Why the aerodynamic shape? Why the stable orientation? Why? Theories multiplied. So did the uncertainties. Yet one thing grew clearer: Atlas behaved as though it knew what it was doing, or at least as though something about it was governed by rules we did not yet understand. Night after night, while telescopes traced its path, one question remained unspoken but ever present, sitting heavy in the minds of those who watched the data scroll across their screens. If Atlas was natural, why did it imitate technology? And if it was technological, why did it hide beneath the disguise of nature? As Atlas moved farther from the sun, accelerating gently but undeniably, one final question emerged, one that no one was prepared to answer. Was it leaving? Or was it heading toward something else? What does humanity do when confronted with something it cannot explain? Does it unite in curiosity or fracture under the weight of uncertainty? As Atlas drifted farther from the sun, these questions spread faster than the scientific papers trying to answer them. Around the world, people searched for meaning. Some claimed Atlas was triggering unusual solar flares. Others linked volcanic activity to its passage, drawing lines between events separated by thousands of miles and thousands of unrelated processes. But why were these connections so tempting? Were people truly seeing patterns, or simply reaching for certainty in the darkness? And what about the silence? Why were space agencies offering fewer statements than expected? Was the absence of information a sign of caution, incompetence, or deliberate withholding? Were officials afraid of public panic, scientific embarrassment, or the possibility that they could not in good faith rule anything out? In the academic world, a deeper question loomed. If a civilization wanted to study us, would it ever reveal itself? Or would it stay quiet, slipping through star systems like a hunter moving through the underbrush, careful not to snap a single branch? The dark forest theory haunted every late-night discussion. If the cosmos is dangerous, if survival demands silence, then would any advanced species willingly broadcast its presence? And if they wouldn't, why would a probe like Atlas come close at all? Was this an accident, a routine survey pass, or something more intentional? If it was intentional, what was the purpose? Observation, contact, measurement? Or was this simply how galactic archaeology looks? Small machines wandering through the dust of the living and the ruin of the dead. Even the most conservative astronomers were forced to confront a troubling question. If Atlas was natural, why did it behave like something designed? And if it was designed, what kind of mind had conceived it? Humanoid, mechanical, biological, something beyond those categories entirely. As days passed, more behavioral anomalies appeared. The acceleration pattern wasn't random. It followed a curve almost too smooth, too mathematically elegant. Could natural outgassing produce such precision? Could radiation pressure alone sculpt such a perfect arc? Or was some internal mechanism adjusting its path, making micro-corrections that no rock or ice could possibly achieve? And if it was adjusting its path, what was it adjusting toward? Philosophers, physicists, psychologists all weighed in. Some argued that humanity was projecting intention onto chaos. Others insisted that dismissing the possibility of design was just as irrational as assuming it. Was the universe stranger than we believed, or simply more intricate than we were ready to accept? Meanwhile, the object continued moving, not toward Earth as some feared, but not aimlessly either. It took a trajectory that brought it close enough for detailed study, yet far enough to avoid danger. Was this coincidence or courtesy? Then came the last anomaly. As Atlas passed beyond the orbit of Mars, its reflective signature shifted again. Some readings hinted that its surface temperature did not match expected cooling rates. Was it retaining heat? Generating heat? Or was there something about its material we still could not identify? As the object finally approached the outer boundary of the solar system, a quiet realization formed among those who had followed it from the beginning. Atlas was not here to communicate. It was not here to reveal. It was not here to threaten. But was it here to watch? And if it was watching, what did it see when it looked at us? A young species scrambling for answers, a civilization terrified of the unknown, or a world desperate to believe it mattered in the great cosmic story. The last images captured of Atlas showed a distant glint fading into interstellar night. No lights, no signals, no final maneuver. Just a steady, controlled departure, as if the object were slipping back into the same silence from which it came. So what was Atlas truly? A piece of cosmic debris, unlike any we have catalogued, a technological relic from a civilization long extinguished. A probe performing a slow, patient survey of star systems, including ours. Or a reminder that the universe is filled with travelers we rarely detect moving quietly between suns. Perhaps the most unsettling question is the simplest: was Atlas unique, or merely the first one we noticed? And if it was the first, we noticed how many others have already passed by, unseen, unrecorded, unquestioned. In the end, Atlas left no message, no traceable intent, no answers. Only a trail of questions suspended in the minds of the billions who never saw it but lived through its visit. Questions about our place, our fragility, our readiness to confront the unknown. Maybe the truth is that Atlas did not come for us at all. Maybe it never even noticed we were here. Or maybe that is the most comforting interpretation we can offer ourselves, because the alternative is far more daunting: that it saw us, understood us, and decided we were not yet worth revealing itself to. And so Atlas slipped back into the dark, and humanity was left with its oldest companion, its need to wonder.